But today our scripture reading is not about doilies. Um, it's from the book of Revelation. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud voice from the throne say, "Look, God is dwelling here with humankind. He will dwell with them, and they will be his peoples. God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. There will be no mourning, crying, or pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." Then the one seated on the throne said, "Look, I am making all things new." He also said, "Write these down, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "All is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will freely give water for the life-giving springs. Those who emerge victorious will inherit these things. I will be their God, and they will be my sons and daughters. Never drive faster than your guardian angel can fly. Evidently, that person outside did not know that. I have a story this morning, an old story. So if it's a story that you know, I encourage you to find something new. If it's a story that you can figure out as you go, I encourage you to think more deeply about why you know the ending, if you do. But there was a man many years ago, I think maybe before the Victorian age, named Martin, and he fell in love. And he married the love of his life, and they had a son. And life went on, and all was good until that day when both Martin's wife and son passed away. Martin was beside himself and left his home and went into the city, and there he rented a small basement room. 2 rooms, a front room and a back room. And that front room had a little window. And because it was in the basement, he could look out right onto the bottom of the street and see everyone that would pass by. Martin's worked day in and day out, worked and cried and worked, his heart broken at the loss of his wife and his son. And years passed, and one day Martin saw shoes that he recognized. He knew everyone by their shoes. And those shoes belonged to someone from his hometown, a man who had been traveling for years and years and years on a spiritual pilgrimage. And Martin went out, noting he was from his hometown, and called him in to sit at the table with him and speak. And he said, "I want to know all about your journeys." And the man told Martin. And then he said to Martin, "And I want to know all about your journeys." "My journey has not been the journey I wished for. I did fall in love. I did see the sparkling eyes of my child, only to lose my wife and my son. I have endeavored in every way to go on one day after another, and yet at this point I am beside myself. I cannot get over my grief. I cannot not remember. I think if I could, if I would, it would all be done and I would be fine with that." "Oh, no," said the wise man who had been on that pilgrimage. "That is not the case, because who gave you life?" "Why, God gave me life." "Then who should you live for?" "You should live for God." Now, Martin wasn't sure what the man meant by that, but it wasn't long before the man got up from the table and he said, "Bless you, Martin, I need to be on my way. Remember who you live for." Now, Martin wasn't a man who went to church very much, but he did have a Bible. And he started to read it, and he read it every night, well, mostly on Sunday. only on Sunday. But he found that on Monday, his heart was just that little bit lighter. And so he decided to read it on Sunday, and then maybe a couple holidays, why not? And after those Sundays and holidays, his heart was even a little bit more light. And so it was that Martin decided I should read the Bible every night. Then my heart would surely be light. And so it was that he read and he prayed and he read and he prayed. And one day he read a story in the Gospel of Matthew about a man. And these are not the words he read, for I'm sure it was not in English, but everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise builder who built a house on bedrock. The rain fell and the floods came and the wind blew and beat against the house. It didn't fall because it was firmly set on bedrock. But everybody who hears these words of mine and doesn't put them into practice is like a fool who builds a house on sand. The rain fell and the floods came and the wind blew and beat against the house, and it fell and was completely destroyed. Martin thought about those words day in and day out as he sat in his little room watching the feet go by, noticing who was a soldier and who was wealthy, who had homemade shoes and who had cobbled shoes. He read and prayed, and each night his heart got lighter. And one night he read a story. We know this story, the story of Jesus going to Simon's house. And there in Simon's house he was greeted and had dinner. And at the end of that dinner, a woman came and anointed Jesus' feet. And Jesus said to them, turned to the woman and to Simon and said, "Did you see this woman? When I entered your home, you didn't give me water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me and kiss me, but she hasn't stopped kissing my feet since I came in. You didn't anoint my head with oil, but she poured perfume all over my feet. This is why I tell you that her sins, though many, have been forgiven. So because she has shown such great love, and whoever is forgiven little loves little." Martin read those words about the house on the sand and the woman who poured out her love for Jesus. He read other stories on and on every single day. And one night he read so much, he sat in his chair and fell asleep. Bible open, words being read, his eyes closed. And in the darkness, in the quiet, he heard, "Martin, Martin." "Yes, Martin, I will come to you tomorrow." Martin wasn't quite sure what to make of that. He slept well that night, and when he awoke, he sat at his bench right in front of that window, making yet one more pair of shoes, because that's what Martin did. And he looked out and he saw shoes. He saw the very shiny galoshes of the master next door. He saw the ones that came, they were all covered with flour, not flowers, just flour, because the baker came by with a basket of goods. And he saw shoes and shoes and boots and boots. And then he noticed one pair away from the window across the way. An old man named Stephen that he knew. Stephen was there with a shovel and worn out shoes. There he was to clear the snow away, for it was now winter in Martin's village. And Martin went back to his work. This is just fine, he said, I'm sure. And when he kept looking, and he realized that Stephen was old enough that he probably didn't really have the strength to take the snow away anyway. And he went out and he said, "Come on in. I've just put the tea on, and you can come in and get warm and have tea with me." And so he did. And there it was that Martin and Stephen spoke and talked. They shared stories of their lives. But all the while, Stephen was sitting at the table, Martin kept doing this. Yes. Are you looking for someone? Yes. But I know this is going to sound absolutely insane, but last night in my dream, I know that Christ came and said, I will see you tomorrow, and I keep looking for him. And there it was that Martin and Stephen shared more stories, and when Stephen was ready to go after many glasses of tea, he said, Martin, thank you for your kindness. Perhaps, just perhaps, you're not crazy after all. He crossed himself and went out the door. Well, Martin was not sure what that was all about, but he went upon his day. And as he watched again the boots, looking for the shoes that would be those of the Christ child himself, he saw again soldier's boots, homemade boots. And then he saw a pair of homemade shoes, knit socks that didn't stay up anymore, and a young woman holding herself against the wall to keep the wind out as she tried to wrap her baby in the cold. Martin went out, spectacles and apron on, and said, come inside. Come inside and warm yourself and warm your baby. It's much easier to wrap the child inside than it would be out there. And he spoke with her. And she said, I thank you because it is warm here. And I have been wandering for days. My husband was conscripted into the army, and I have not seen him for 8 months. And I was employed, but when my employer noticed the baby was coming, she let me go. And I've been staying with someone who's been kind enough to give me a place to stay for no money, but I have no money. I have no shawl. I have no anything. For I hocked my shawl yesterday to buy what food I could for my baby. Sit, 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 sit. Sit right here by the stove. Sit, 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 sit. And I'll take the baby. Now, Martin held that child, and he felt all the love he had had for his son. He knew just what to do with that baby. Oh, he snuggled it up close. And as he did, holding it in one hand, he laid a tablecloth. I'm not sure if it was a doily or not. Perhaps it was. He laid that table and pulled out the soup and filled a bowl with her and said, you eat, I'll take care of the baby. He laid that baby on the bed next to the table, and then that's what he did. He snuggled at it. He tickled it. He made that baby laugh. He did everything but stick his finger in his mouth. You know how that is for babies. They love that thing. But Martin's hands were dark and dirty from the leather that he had been working with, so he just laughed. And then he thought for a minute, and he went to the very back corner of the room, and he pulled a shawl out that had been his wife's. As you take this, wrap yourself and wrap your child, and may God bless you. And here are the 6 pence you need to get your own shawl from the pawn shop. Bless you. Bless you, she said. She wrapped her child up, carried him out, no longer cold. Martin went back to his bench and kept looking. He kept looking and watching the shoes that went by. And then he saw it. Old Granny was there, the apple granny. She had a basket with all what was left of the apples she had brought in to sell, and on her back was a bag of wooden chips that she had collected from some place where they were building a house. And those chips were irritating her, and as she was uncomfortable, she put down her basket of apples, took off the pack of chips to readjust them. And as she did so, a child, a little boy, quick as a wink, dashed over, grabbed an apple, and started to run. But he underestimated Granny. She was quick as he was. She grabbed him and started to scold him. At that, he saw that the Granny was going to beat him up. Why did you steal my apple, you little rascal, you? Well, Martin couldn't abide that. And so it was that he went outside through his spectacles office. He went, and then he gathered up, went over to Granny, and said, "Da, da, 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 da. Granny, Granny, you can't be accosting this child. You can't be accosting, but he stole my apple." Yes, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I think you know the end of the story, do you not? Have you figured it out? Who hasn't figured it out? Does anybody need me to tell you the end? Austin, did you figure it out? No, Austin. Martin went to sleep that night after he told the granny not to beat that little boy, but to forgive him. And when he did, he said to Granny, "You know, God forgives us for all we do, so we should forgive as well." And she thought, well, okay. And when she did, Martin said, "Don't worry, I'll pay you for the apple if you took one." She went to grab her bag of chips and put them back on her back. But you know what happened? Austin, that little boy said, "Granny, I'm going your way. I'll carry them for you." And she did. By the time Martin got back into his house, Austin, it was dark. The lamplighter came and lit the lamps, and he knew he would light the lamps in his own house. And when he did, he knew it was time to read his Bible. And that night, he thought he was going to open it up to the Gospel of Luke that he had been reading. But when he did, he opened it up right away to Matthew 25. And these are the words that came out to him, Austin, right as he opened his Bible. "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick and in prison and didn't do anything to help you?" And then he will answer, "I assure you that you haven't done it for the least of these, you haven't done it for me." And so it was that Martin slept with those words. "If you have done it to the least of these, you have done it unto me." And Martin knew right then and there that he needn't look any further than the three guests that had been with him that day. For Christ had come, and Christ will come to you and I as Christ shows up right now in our very midst. Compassion, care, grace for all that we need. For all that we need. Amen.